video, I'm taking my marbleized piece of paper and I'm going to try and turn it into a quick pattern and then index it or color separate it in Photoshop so that I can um, use it for colorways. So I've already brought in my artwork here. You can see it's floating on its own layer, but it has a lot of white in the background. So I'm going to be working with a few things before I start making this into a pattern. I know that I want it to be white, blue, and black. Those are all the colors that I want, and I'm not ready to color separate it yet, but I can adjust it so that the artwork is crisper. So I'm going to image adjust levels, and I'm just going to bring the levels over on the sides so that it visually reads more like a 3-color design or 2 colors on a ground. And then I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to do a very simple pattern. So for this, I'm going to actually turn it into a half drop pattern. So I'm going to move it over to the upper left-hand side, and then I'm going to duplicate it by holding the move tool with the option key to get that double arrow. And then I'm going to move this down and overlap it. So not all stuff is going to come together. I'm sorry, not all original artwork is going to come together really quickly. So this is definitely a simple one. It's just going to be circles. I'm overlapping it so that I can erase away, or use the selection tool here. I can erase away the overlapped areas so that it looks like the marbling is just falling right on top of the marbling. So I'm using the magic wand tool now, which is sort of old school. I can switch to the quick selection tool. And I'm just trying to get some of this white stuff so that I can hit delete on my keyboard and get rid of it. And I have no need to get rid of the stuff down here, and you'll see why in a minute. So I don't want to mess up the artwork. I just want to get this white stuff out of the way. So I'm going to hit delete, and now I have this overlap. Where I decide to overlap is kind of up to me, but one thing that's really important is I'm letting it line up with itself by using the margin so that I don't end up doing something like this or even like this where I won't actually have a repeating pattern anymore. So I'm going to bring this up here. And in fact, I think I'm covering some really beautiful stuff. So I'm also going to use the eraser tool, which is on the toolbar right here. And I'm just going to make a small eraser, and I'm going to see what happens if I get rid of some of that black. You might notice that it's a very soft, fuzzy eraser. So that can be adjusted here in the options menu. I can make it a harder eraser. That kind of depends on the artwork, like what quality of erasing you want. You just want it to kind of look like it's naturally part of your artwork. So a harder one works better for this. So anyway, this artwork is kind of messy. I think I spilled some water on it. And, you know, oftentimes artwork is not going to be totally crisp. So we'll do the best we can here. So I'm going to merge these 2 layers together. So layer, merge down. You can use shortcuts on your keyboard to do that too. And then I'm going to do something called the floating selection, where I bring down a guide so that I can find the beginning of my repeat by selecting it here. Command J to put it on its own layer. And then I pull this down to find the end of the repeat. This is just a lot easier than trying to figure out where the repeat begins and ends. It's just like a visual guide to show where it begins and ends. So if I take this away, I can see, oh yeah, it was lining up perfectly. I couldn't even see it. So there's a lot of other videos that talk about this, but this is a short one. So now I'm going to take this entire thing between the guides and crop it. And then I'm going to give myself a little more room on the right. Maybe a lot more room, and then I can always crop it down. And now I'm going to take this area that is in a vertical repeat, like it would connect to itself, because I was able to crop it perfectly. I'm going to duplicate it and sort of make a decision about what kind of a pattern I want. Do I want it to be a straight repeat, or do I want it to be a half drop? A half drop will kind of lock into itself. So I'm going to do that, duplicate this here, merge them together. And then I'm not going to use my cursor because my hand isn't steady enough to move it perfectly. I'm going to actually use the move tool, the shift key, and the left arrow on my keyboard so that I can just move it over and see what happens when it kind of locks into place. And again, I'll be getting rid of the things that overlap so it connects to itself. So let's see if I can get rid of this white here. Delete that. And then again, with the eraser, I could go in and fine tune some of the areas. Because it's overlapping, I don't need to worry about filling in any blank space. And that's one of the tricks that I came up with for this. So this is the kind of thing that the basics are really easy, but in practice, you definitely have to come up with, you know, a good habit of doing this, using different tools to get rid of the overlapping things and kind of make it suit your own work flow. So that looks pretty good. I mean, I could move it further away and have an intentional space, or I can move it closer together and have it, a narrower repeat. So I'm going to kind of find that happy middle ground here where I don't have to fill in any blank areas, but I'm also not crushing it together. So once that's done, I'm going to merge these two layers down. So layer, merge down. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the floating selection where I start at the beginning, usually about a quarter of the way in, and into the artwork, that is, not into the file. And select from the upper left-hand corner, Command J to put it on its own layer. And then I need to find the end of the repeat. And again, it's just a technique to make it easier to find things because it's very hard to line things up perfectly. Okay, so I found the spot and I'm going to make the main layer invisible so I know exactly where to put my guide. And then I can toss that guide because I don't need it anymore. So that is actually my repeat unit. If I take this and say image crop, it's a half drop repeat, which means that it staggers halfway down. So I need to take it and, image canvas size 200%. And then I need to duplicate it and click it into place. So, I don't know if you can hear my cat is running around the apartment. Okay, so I have now what I would consider a straight repeat that contains a half drop, like you can see the circular swirl. But this is going to make it much easier to work with because I don't have to constantly step it out to a half drop now. I can just use it as a block of pattern. So I merged everything down just to make sure I'm cleaning things up, and I'm going to put everything on its own layer after that, which means I select it and then I do new layer by a cut. That's kind of a favorite of mine. And then I'm going to show you what this looks like if I step it out, let's say 200% horizontally and 400% vertically. You can see there's that little excess stuff that always happens, sorry, when I don't fully merge or fully crop. But this is my pattern block. I'm going to take that there, merge it together, using the shortcut Command E on my keyboard to merge things together. And then here is my print. So I avoided the dreaded mirroring to try to resolve the print by actually putting it into a pattern repeat. And I think it looks pretty good. So the next phase of this is going to be me doing a really simple separation so that I can try to make colorways on the computer. It's not going to be perfect because there's a lot of tone in this. Working with a more graphic thing is going to make your life easier. But for our purposes today, I'm just going to take this and turn it into a two-color repeat, or I'm sorry, a three-color design. So I'm going to go to Image, Mode, Index, and I have to actually do a couple of things in this index color chart. Like, for instance, I might use the diffusion to get sort of a textured feel in some areas, but in any case, I need to take preview off because what I want to do and then preview, not preview while I'm doing it. So I'm going to go into the palette and I'm going to say custom, and then I'm going to go in and clear out what's already there because the computer got a head start and said like, oh, I already know what colors you want. And I'm like, you don't know me. So, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to close that. So now I just have an all white palette and I can click on the first thing and go right into the design and say, no, I want this type of white just in case it's different. Go to the second chip and say, I want this type of blue. And you'll notice in this artwork, there are more than one types of blue, but that's why we're going to preview this to see how it works with just very simple selections. So I have 3 colors here. I say okay. And now I'm going to hit preview before I process it. And it shows me the artwork. I mean, it's not perfect. Let's be real. There's a lot of like stuff that got kind of decided for me, but the artwork was never going to be that easy to work with. So I think we're going to go with this very simple separation. The only thing you could change is, whether or not you want diffusion, and the diffusion, makes it look more watercolored, and sometimes that optical blending can really help. So let's say none diffusion here. You can see it, it won't kill me to have that. You can also increase the amount of diffusion if you have like an intense watercolor feeling you want to work with. I'm going to keep it at 50%. So now that I have it at 50%, what I have is an indexed file. Sorry, I have so many files open, but actually I'm working with a lot of colorway files for a project. So, it's a real skill. So I have what's called an index file. You'll see if I go to image mode, it's indexed. What that means is I can't do anything. I can't like make the color red and then draw on it, because it's basically said, no, I only use these 3 colors. I don't use any other colors. So the only way to change the colors in here is to go into image mode and color table at the bottom. And this is where I can go in and say, you know what, I'm going to take a color like the blue, and I'm going to turn it into pink, and it changes everywhere. So before I do that, I want to point out that you also have a swatches menu. And in the swatches menu, you can keep a library of colors. So let's say I want marble is going to be my colors. And I've done a pitch sheet, and I want to, say my second colorway is going to be like still a white ground, but the black is going to become some like dark pink. So I would add it here. So that's going to be in there. And then my blue is going to become some sort of like, I have a superpower to make things ugly. So I'm going to do that right now, this horrible color. And then keeping those there means that when I go into my color table, it's really easy to create colorways. So I can say obviously I would save the file before I did this, but I would say, you know what, I'm going to make the light blue, this yellow. I mean, you guys might like this, I don't know. And there's that. So if I've decided that white is the ground cloth, meaning I'm never going to print the white, I'm just going to keep whatever the fabric is, then the white will never change. Of course, you can also use a dark colored ground, or you could use something that's like, a gray or something, but you have to set those controls when you're working on a print design with a mill. Like one more screen printing is, one more charge. So anyway, I think that gives you enough information, and then you would actually just save each version as its own colorway, and then you can work through it from there. Okay.